just like you, living month by month, trying to make his budget work, except for when he runs out of money at the end of the month, he still has to put a smile on and keep going, okay? I can promise you, your pastor did not get into this for the money.
The Fresh Church Podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Fresh Church Podcast. I have a question for you. Why are ministers so lonely? Why are pastors and church leaders living without friendships? Why is the ministry such a lonely experience? You know, loneliness is a real thing. And as a pastor or church leader, you may have felt it more than once. You know, the fact is, it's one of the primary reasons that people quit ministry. Maybe you were a volunteer and you got hired on staff and now you're trying to navigate this whole friendship thing. Or maybe you got hired and you moved to a different part of the country. You're engaging people that you've never met before, trying to create friends. Do you have friends on staff? Do you have friends in your church, in your community? If I were to ask you right now, who is your best friend? And you can't say your spouse. Who would it be? Let me paint the picture for you. Church gets over, and you might be in a strategic volunteer position or a kids pastor or a youth pastor or director. Maybe you're an executive pastor or even the lead pastor. And church finally gets done. A good portion of your week has been preparing for this experience. You've got everything just right because Sunday comes whether you're ready or not. And that experience for you could vary based on your role, your position, the church that you're in. Maybe it's trying to run a ministry fair after service or trying to find the right way to connect with people in the lobby. Maybe it's training a new volunteer, introducing a new curriculum, or just working with your teams in different areas, overseeing multiple spots. Maybe your whole job on Sunday is helping with the worship team or doing connection points. Maybe you're the primary speaker and you've worked all week to get your sermon just right, that you delivered just perfectly, and it's done. And maybe there's a bead of sweat on your brow, a little bit of exhaustion starting to come in. You've poured your heart into this. And after the service, you may have heard a couple, "Good job, Pastor." And then there was always two or three people that have other things they want to talk about. Sometimes that derails your day and things get, and you're just like, I just want to process and get through this. And you try to quickly clean up because you can feel the adrenaline rush coming down. You know that your day is just about to get exhausting. In the car home, you might attempt to give yourself a couple accolades or ask your family, "Hey, how did it go?" hoping for a couple positive statements in your life. You're home, you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed. And maybe for you to try to recuperate some of that, you sit on the couch and watch TV, or you try to take a nap, or maybe you just hang out with your family that night. You attempt a reset. And as you think through the events of the last 6 hours, you're already starting to think about next week and what that could look like. And as you're sitting there watching TV, maybe one of those dumb commercials play about some guys that are drinking a beer together in the backyard, and you're like, "Look, they've got friends, and I'm sitting here by myself." Maybe you see a pizza commercial and everybody's reaching in, grabbing a piece of pizza, and you know that's not the case for you. You only eat pizza on church events, and you never get a slice when it's said and done. Or maybe you see that commercial of some friends out on the lake together, or maybe in a boat, and it's promoting some sort of pharmaceutical item or something like that. But all you can see is they have something you don't. And you start to feel lonely. Who do you have in your life? Who do you have that you connect with on a regular basis? And then you start to ignore that thought. No, I'm not going to pay attention to that, okay? It's what am I going to do next? Okay, what am I going to focus on next? The thing you're going to go after. And all of a sudden, you've pushed aside relationship and you've put your emphasis on the experience. And week after week after week. And pretty soon, you find that going to church is a chore. You go and you get the job done. Okay, but you find yourself talking less and less to people, connecting with people less and less, and just getting the experience accomplished. Do you want to know one of the most hypocritical things that a pastor does? Is try to tell me how important love is and how we need relationship with others, but they have absolutely no friends. I've noticed pastors that will talk a good talk, but they don't walk the walk. They talk about the importance of authentic relationships and small groups and people connecting, but they're not in a small group. They don't have authentic relationships. They talk about, spending all week preparing for the success of the weekend, the experience element of it, so that people can build relationship afterwards. But when the experience is over for them, there's no relationships. They're not spending time with friends. Rather than training people up and then getting invested in their lives, they train people up and turn them over to somebody else. They don't actually have relationships. The complaint of so many people out there about pastors is, statements like this. Well, they're only in it for the money, and their sermons are out of touch. And, they weren't really there for me when I needed them. And they didn't even know my name. Okay, well, if you're watching this and you're not a pastor, okay, let me clear something up right away, okay? Your pastor probably drives like a 15-year-old beat-up car. Okay, he rents his house. He definitely did not choose to do this for the money. Okay, he's just like you, living month by month, trying to make his budget work, except for when he runs out of money at the end of the month, he still has to put a smile on and keep going, okay? I can promise you, your pastor did not get into this for the money. There's a lot of other occupations he could have chosen instead. I've got a pastor friend, he gets judged because every year he gets to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks. Yeah, that's because it's a family vacation paid for by his in-laws. Okay, they take care of all of the expenses. He definitely can't afford that, but at least he has family that he gets to enjoy it with. Now, the other points, they're valid. Valid as far as you're out of touch. Well, you know what? If you don't have a relationship with the people around you, you don't know what they're going through. They're not really there for me. Well, if I have a relationship with you, I want to be there for you. If a random person calls me up on the phone, I'm probably not going to answer it. But if somebody calls me up and says, I'm at the hospital, I'm going to be there for them. Yeah, they don't even know my name. Well, you take somebody out for coffee, you eat lunch with somebody, and your relationship level goes up a level. And all of a sudden, you know their name. You're building a relationship along the way. Now, I might not be able to tell you everybody's name, but I can promise you if we've hung out together, I'm at least going to be able to give a good attempt at what your name is. I'm going to want to be a part of your life. I'm going to build relationship with you. We're going to connect. But most pastors, they don't know how to build that relationship. They don't have friends, and they don't know how to make friends. So they focus on the experience. 3 songs, 2 announcements, sermon with 3 points, application, pray, done. Say hi to people in the lobby, go home. And they're lonely. If you actually stop for a moment and think about it, are you lonely? Listen to these quotes from some famous professional people who are in front of audiences. Lady Gaga in her 2017 Netflix documentary said, I'm alone every night, and all these people will leave, right? They'll leave, and then I'll be alone. And I go from everyone touching me all day and talking at me all day to total silence. Anne Hathaway, in an interview with Angelina Jolie in 2010, said, loneliness is my least favorite thing about life. The thing that I'm most worried about is just being alone without anybody to care for or someone who will care for me. Joss Whedon, a Hollywood director and producer of action movies, says, loneliness is about the scariest thing out there. Tom Hanks, everybody has something that chews them up. And for me, that thing was always loneliness. Or as Taylor Swift writes in her song 22, we're happy, free, confused, and lonely all at the same time. I felt that way before. Happy, free, confused, and lonely all at the same time. Well, my perspective as a pastor changed after a holiday experience. And my wife and I, we've been involved in churches ever since we got married. And those have not been in our hometown, so we've traveled. And most of our lives, we've lived away from family, so that meant come holiday time, family wasn't around unless we went to them. Now, often we would go home for Christmas or Thanksgiving. We'd bounce back and forth between the parents, but it was the other holidays. I mean, like, we didn't really have somebody to go do fireworks with. We go look for a place to watch fireworks, but we didn't have people, or even like Labor Day, Memorial Day. People would hang out and do things together, and we didn't. We were just at home trying to catch up from all the crazy summer to-do lists. We'd see people post about costume parties during certain times of the year, and we'd comment on it, but we weren't invited to it. And we longed for the opportunity to be part of that backyard barbecue or to go to the lake with someone. But it was okay because our family was most important. We spent time with our family and we spent time at church and we were doing things. And it was a good time for my kids, but we didn't really have friends. We just had each other. And to be honest, we were lonely. We were pastors in someone else's city. We decided we need to make a change. You see, during that time, we were working through those core values that you've heard me share: fresh, family, relationship, experience, safety, and hope. And we decided if these are going to be core values in ministry as pastors, we needed to make them core values in our life. And we had family. That was a big deal for us, but we were lacking relationships. And we were pretty good at those other elements, but we were in a church of 4,000 and we organized lots of small groups, but we didn't attend one. We taught our leaders how to build relationships with kids and students, but we didn't really build relationships with them. We said, thank you for serving. See you next Sunday. We had people to our house, but it was always for training or appreciation or something church related. We didn't really have friends. We didn't have authentic relationships with people in our town either. And honestly, neither did the rest of the pastors on our staff team. One year, some friends of ours from church invited us over for Easter. Now, Easter for us is one of the most exhausting Sundays of the year. We were running 4 services. We had 1,300 kids over those 4 services. We did Easter egg hunts during the services. It was organized. It was crazy. We had a whole army of volunteers. And when that 3rd service got over on Sunday, we were exhausted, wiped out. And afterwards, some friends said, hey, come over. You don't have to bring anything. Just come over and hang out. And we went over and there were 3 or 4 families there and my kids got to participate in their egg hunt. And they put dollar bills in their plastic eggs. That's a fun egg hunt. And we had great barbecue and we got to just enjoy ourselves. And there was no stress put on us because they knew we were exhausted from a crazy weekend. We just got to go rest. And I went from being Pastor Tony to just Tony. And they became some of our closest friends. Even years later, as we've moved away, we still talk to them on a regular basis on the phone, not just a text. We talk because they're our friends. And we decided after that we needed to change. We were going to change the status quo. We started a small group to help launch our married people ministry. And we told the people in that group that we were literally just going to meet together for 2 months and then release them to run their own small groups, which they did. And then we did another small group and another small group. And as we were in those small groups, even though I was leading them, we built relationship with the people in those small groups. Until our final small group, I wasn't even leading. I just got to participate in it. I got to be one of the others in the room talking about married life. All of a sudden, there were 10, 12 couples out there that I had relationship with. Then we went from having nowhere to go to having options on Independence Day where we were going to go eat barbecue at. Options on different holidays. I'll never forget the year that I had 3 different families begging me to come over for Super Bowl Sunday. How many years did I not even watch Super Bowl because there was nobody to watch it with? I had friends in my life. And suddenly it changed. My wife had friends. My kids had friends. People like Tony and not just the pastor at church. I remember a lady opening up her pool for my wife and daughters to be able to swim in during the week, even when she wasn't there, because she was a friend. And my wife and her grew closer and closer as they began to share just about real life stuff together. This was probably the hardest church that we left. The exit here was very difficult for us because we weren't just leaving a church and people that we've been ministering to. We were leaving close friends, people that we loved. And I went from being a hypocritical pastor talking about relationships to a real pastor who lived in relationships. So I want to challenge you today as a church leader, as a pastor, to have relationships, to be connected with others. And I want to explain to you on 4 different levels. And I want to take you as an example through the life of Elisha. Now, Elisha is one of the greatest Old Testament prophets. If you're familiar with your Bible at all, there's a whole bunch of narrative, historical books that are in there, and then there's the prophetical books, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and a whole bunch of other crazy names. But some of the greatest prophets were actually found within Samuel and Kings and Chronicles. And you got Nathan the prophet who confronts David and Bathsheba. You've got Elijah who took on King Ahab, and then there's Elisha. And I want to look at his life for just a minute because I think he gives us a true example of what it means to have relationships with others, to have friends with others. We see in 1 Kings 19, Elisha shows up, okay? And literally Elisha is in a field, he's plowing it, okay? He's going through with his cow, and Elijah comes up and he throws his coat on him and he tells him to follow him. He literally was like, leave everything and come follow me. And Elisha did. He left his family. He left everything that he had, and he followed Elijah. You see, Elisha had a coach. He had a mentor. Elijah picked him, and he wasn't going to waste that opportunity. And Elisha follows Elijah everywhere that he goes. And at the end of his life, Elijah's trying to distance himself from Elisha as he prepares to meet his maker. But Elisha refuses to leave him. His coach has become his friend. The final request that Elisha has is that he will inherit a double share of your spirit and become your successor. That's what he wants. Okay, a double share and to become a successor. And that's exactly what happens. As Elijah's taken to heaven, Elisha's there and he takes the cloak. Okay, and we see in 1st and 2nd Kings that Elisha does exactly twice as many miracles as Elijah. And just like Elijah coached Elisha also coached others. You know, we see them listed as servants or assistants in the Bible, but they were disciples. They were closest friends to that prophet. And specifically, we see one person by the name of Gehazi who worked very closely with Elisha. And Gehazi saw many of Elisha's miracles and even, performed some of them on his behalf. I mean, it was an incredible experience. And so the second thing we can take from this is that Elisha had people that he coached, that he mentored. And just like Elisha had become a friend to Elijah, I'm sure that Elisha became friends with Gehazi as well. You spend enough time together, you build relationship. Well, did Elisha have relationships beyond that? Well, Elisha had co-workers that he cared about. We see throughout 2 Kings that there was a group of prophets interwoven into the narrative of Elisha's life. And we see miracles from these encounters, such as some supernatural debt reduction, a purification of some poison soup, and even a floating axe head. Okay, you see throughout this, Elisha was in relationship with the other people in ministry and their families. He was connected. Finally, Elisha had people in his life that he cared about. There was a family in the town of Shunem, and anytime that Elisha was in the area, they invited him over. In fact, they even built a little place that he could stay in. And they housed him, they fed him, they became friends. And Elisha appreciated this relationship greatly and even prayed blessings on them for a child. He protected them from a famine and helped restore everything that they'd lost. He cared for them. They were his friends. So I want to challenge you with these examples today. Number one, who are you learning from? Who's speaking into your life? I believe everyone needs a coach. Elisha had a coach. Do you have a coach? Do you have a mentor? Do you have somebody that is building relationship into you, that's becoming a friendship as you get closer and closer and you learn from them? Elisha stayed close to Elijah. Joshua stayed close to Moses. Peter, James, and John stayed close to Jesus. Who are you staying close to? I've had the honor of coaching so many people over the years, and a few of them grabbed a hold of that opportunity and not only been a friend, but I said, I'm going to be here with the end. I want that double portion accordingly. I want to challenge you to get into a relationship with a coach. And if you don't have a coach, get one. You can call me if you want. As Jesus said, come follow me and I'll teach you how to fish for men. You spend a lot of time together when you teach somebody how to fish. You spend time, and in the midst of that, you build relationship. Number two, pour into the lives of others. Are you coaching somebody? Are you investing into somebody else? If you've been coached, then you need to coach someone else and keep the blessing passing on from one person to the next. Look for that person with a zeal for God and go tell them that you're wanting to be their coach and their friend. This past year we were at Mount Hermon Family Camp, and I got to see an incredible interaction between our guest speakers. Our morning speaker was a veteran pastor by the name of Pastor Crawford Loritz. And his ministry has impacted lives over decades, big churches, especially in the South. And the evening speaker was a younger pastor by the name of Ricky Jenkins, who also did an incredible job. I love listening to it. But he shared how he's close with a friend in Southern California, another pastor friend by the name of Albert Tate. And years ago, Pastor Crawford had grabbed Ricky and Albert and said he was going to mentor them. He was going to coach them. And as he explained what that looked like, it wasn't just a staff meeting or he had them clean out a closet. He actually had them move into his house. He wanted them to see what it was like to be in ministry, what it was like to be a pastor, what it was like to be a husband, what it was like to be a father. He coached and mentored these two men who both grew out of that into great pastors themselves and are impacting thousands of people because Pastor Loritz was willing to go, I'm going to invest in these two guys. And their life was never the same. That relationship turned into family for them. Paul did that with Timothy. I mean, that's a whole subject of a whole other podcast, right? About how Paul took Timothy and his family and raised him up. But there was a friendship there. There was a connection there. I'll never forget that one Sunday morning in California when a man came walking up to me and asked if I would mentor him. And to be honest, I didn't really know him. I knew his sister, and he was about my age. I'd seen him around, but I even wasn't 100% sure what his name was. And he asked if I'd be willing to mentor him because he wanted to be a kids pastor. And so over the next 2 years, we met together regularly. I was able to bring him on staff part-time at one point. I spent 2 years investing in his life, and we became friends. And as transition happened and God moved me away from there, he became the easy person to fill my spot. Kind of like Elisha did for Elijah. He became my successor. And neither one of us knew that what was going to actually happen there. But I will tell you this, after the last 5 years of watching him in ministry, watching him go through some heartache and some trauma and some challenges, especially with not being able to have services inside, doing things outside, working through all of the dynamics that occurred in 2020 and 21, and then a senior pastor transition through that and all the different things. I'm so proud of that guy. I mean, Pastor Chad Villanueva is one of the best kids pastors that I know. And I can say that because he was willing to be mentored. And now I see him coaching others and speaking into others people's lives. And I'm not only proud of what he's doing, but I'm proud to call him my friend. Number 3, are you connected with your peers in ministry? Maybe other staff members, other people doing the same job as you in other churches, in other towns. Are you involved in networking events and creating relationships beyond that? It's one thing to go to one of these meetings, but to actually connect with somebody after the fact and build relationships. During this season of creating relationships in our lives, I started making it a point to connect with people in the same type of work as me that didn't live in the same town, but they were doing the same kind of things that I was doing. I just wanted somebody that I could talk to that got it, that understood what I was going through, that understood some of my challenges. Now, I didn't call them up to try to steal their ideas. Well, maybe sometimes, okay? I didn't call them up to see what they could give me because friendship is about back and forth. And we'd ask, hey, how's it going? What can I pray with you about? Okay, what are you not telling me? And it wasn't really like an accountability partner with sin and stuff, nothing like that. It was just two friends talking on the phone. And we found some things in common. We started finding out that besides kids ministry and family ministry, there were other things that we liked. I mean, I remember there was one kids pastor, we would hang out and do Disneyland together because we both loved Disneyland. And we very seldom talked about church while we were there. We talked about family, we talked about life, and we talked about what ride we were going on next. For another person who was outdoor experiences, he loved hiking, so we go on hikes together. Find those connection points with people in other staff positions in other churches and other towns, or maybe even within your own church, that you can continue to build that relationship with. Do you have a friend in ministry in your life? And number 4, who do you have in your life that's just a friend? They don't even understand everything that you do as a pastor. They don't even understand all the different aspects. Just like maybe you don't understand what they do for a living. Okay, you can talk about work a little bit, but pretty soon it goes over both of your heads. It's just somebody that you like spending time with. You know, my best friend lives in California, and he oversees a department that's in charge of all of the data collection for the largest utility company in the state. I have no idea what that means, but he has fun doing it. He's an engineer. He thinks very, very quantifiable and structured, and that's not the way my brain works even slightly. I dream in color. Okay. I think he dreams in spreadsheets, but we talk, we hang out, we're friends. Now, here's the crazy thing. We were at a camp one year, and I was directing the camp and also speaking at that camp, and he was a sound guy. And we were just talking, and he was doing, honestly, he was making sure my mic worked and I sounded good, and I loved him for it. Okay. Everything I needed, he was on track, on point, it was done. And we just started talking more and more. And my daughter and his son are only a year apart. And people started coming up and asking him, they're like, how long have your dads been best friends? And I overheard the conversation, realized I'd never put that title on it, but yeah, this was the guy I wanted to be my friend. And when camp got over, I walked up and I said, hey, Brent, thank you so much for all your help. And more than that, thank you for being my friend. Man, you're like the best friend I got. And from that point on, our relationship changed. Why? Because I claimed it. I grabbed it. I'm like, dude, you're my best friend. He's like, okay. And just like that, maybe that's a guy thing. I don't know. But it worked for us. We started building relationship. You see, years before, my wife and I went through a season where we went through some counseling. And, it was a 2-month period where we were having some challenges with our career. There were a lot of changes happening in our life. And we just wanted to go see a counselor to make sure our marriage was okay. My parents had gone through divorce, and I wanted to make sure that our relationship was fine. After 2 months, the counselor said, you guys are doing great. We don't need to continue meeting, which honestly, most counselors always want to meet another time. But we were like, great. But there was one area that she really worked with us on that I'm so thankful for. I'm so glad I went to that counseling. And I would encourage you, it's totally fine to go see a counselor, learn from them. It provided a safe environment where we could share about things going on. But the thing that she challenged us with is that for my wife and I, we were each other's best friends. And she said, you need friends outside of your marriage. You need other friends. We're like, oh, we got friends, but we couldn't list their names. We talked to each other about everything. We didn't have friends. And so out of that, my wife, she called up a lady in the church and said, will you be my friend? And the lady was like, we're friends. No, you don't understand. I need a best friend. Will you be that? Of course. They still talk. I did the same with a guy. Now, we hung out a lot. We did things, but there was a point where I said, hey, you know what, John, you're my best friend. He went, cool. Let's go get Chipotle. Okay. And that's what we did. Okay. And we talked. And you know what's the cool part is? That was like 15 years ago. Last week, John called me up. Hey, I was getting coffee and I thought of you. How's life going? Friendships continue on. He's not in ministry. He's in sales, but he's my friend. Do you ever feel that way? Do you feel sometimes that the only person who understands me is my wife, my spouse? Or do you have people that you're connected with outside of your church? Pastor, church leader, stop living a life of loneliness. Get out there and make some friends. And there's 4 ways that you can do that. Get a coach. And if you don't have a coach, I would love to be your coach. Let's set up a time to talk. Go to www.freshman.org and let's set up a time to do that. Secondly, coach someone else. You're a leader, lead someone. And as you coach them, develop relationship with them. Number 3, find people within your influence, other pastors and leaders that do what you do, whether within your church or in your surrounding area, people that you can connect with who understand what you're going through. And number 4, go make a friend with somebody. Man, if you don't think that's important, look at the life of Jesus. We know that he had disciples that he was investing in, but he had a friend. His name was Lazarus. Lazarus was dear to his heart. He went and hung out with him a couple times in the Bible. How many other times are not mentioned? They had relationship. In fact, he loved that friend so much that when his friend died, he brought him back because he couldn't stand the thought of losing that friend. Have a friend like Lazarus in your life, somebody that you can hang out with. Jesus can do it. You definitely can do it. You can have the greatest Sunday morning church experience. You can have all the policies and procedures in the world. You can be the best preacher out there sharing the hope of Jesus. You can have a solid family unit that you can count on. But if you're not in relationship, you're hurting as a leader. You're hollow inside. You're lonely. Get into a relationship with the people around you. Get a coach. Coach someone. Build a relationship with other people that do ministry with you. Make a friend outside of that. Be an example to the people in your church and community about what it means to have relationship.